We'll get to questions now. Look, we've talked about this before in my office. You're struggling to meet projected end strength in this fiscal year. Your budget proposes to reduce the Army's end strength next year by about 12,000 soldiers. This is for either one of you who wants to answer this. Can you please explain to the committee why this decision was made and what the impacts of this cut will be on operations?
Certainly, Chairman. As I said in my opening statement, we were primarily focused on wanting to make sure that we preserve the quality of the force, the level of soldiers that we're bringing into the Army. We could have, for example, lowered standards, taken in more Cat 4 soldiers, for example, issued more waivers, as the Army did several years ago, but we didn't want to do that. From an operational perspective, we're confident that at the level that we're reducing to, we'll still be able to meet our requirements. We do want to make some changes to how we're recruiting to try to help us come back up. We've done things like offer a $50,000 incentive for certain particular MOSs. We are allowing soldiers to pick their first duty station. But I think we need to look, frankly, given at the environment where you have, only 23% of Americans even eligible to join the Army, and you have propensity to join at, frankly, quite a low level. We need to look at some more substantial changes to how we recruit, and we've stood up a Tiger team to look at that, and we're going to try to be really creative and aggressive in terms of exploring ideas to help us going forward.
Okay. The Army Reserve is also well underneath its planned end strength, I believe, by about 9,000 soldiers. Yet your budget request is not reducing the size of the Army Reserve. Can you tell me why there's a different approach between active military and compared to Army Reserve?
Well, Senator, we're certainly having, as you know, we're having some retention challenges in the Army Reserve, in part because retention in the active is quite good. So we don't have as many folks leaving the active component and going into the Army Reserve. But the Army Reserve is also facing the same types of challenges in the recruiting environment that we are in the active. So we're looking at that and trying to make sure that we're balancing the resources that we're providing to all three components for recruiting.
Okay. General McConville, China is a top-pacing threat. This requires our military to be modernized with an emphasis on nimble distributed operations. My question for you is, what does the traditional standing land force model have to offer in Indo-Pacific theater of operations?
Well, Chairman, I think the land force has a lot to offer. Most of the militaries in the Pacific are led by Army forces, and we definitely have a role. But as far as our specific role, we play a tremendous role in setting the theater with logistics. We provide command and control. We're building long-range precision fires that will give the combatant commander the option to penetrate integrated air and missile defense capability. We're building mid-range capability that will hold a potential adversary's amphibious capability at risk. We're providing air and missile defense, which allows us to counter unmanned aerial systems, theater ballistic missiles, and also adversary air. And then we have a very highly trained, discipline-fit ground force that can seize and hold terrain or do a forced entry if required.
Secretary Wormuth, how is the Army being responsive to Indo-PACOM's vision for sustained joint presence in the region, and what can Army uniquely contribute to the joint force?
Chairman, we've got about $1.4 billion in the budget for support to Indo-PACOM and supporting the joint force. So primarily through Operation Pacific Pathways, that's a series of exercises that are underway in Indo-PACOM. We are trying to make sure that we have Army presence in the theater up to about 6 months a year. And so we are demonstrating combat credible forces in the region. We are also, through those exercises, trying to work on expanding our logistics capability in the theater and looking at opportunities for expanding our prepositioned stocks as well.